Maayong gabi, magandang gabi po, tay kay Hoam, and welcome to our third Design Davao Society Talks Online. My name is Myk Sanchez. I'm the Assistant Manager of SKS Interiors, Davao, the premier retailer of high-quality bathroom and kitchen, modular kitchens here in Davao. And we have been actively supporting the construction design industry in Davao City for 27 years now, by God's grace. Since I started working for SKS in 2004, I always felt the need to differentiate our business through good design. In 2019, I felt a strong need to elevate and expand the conversation about design for the Baweños, mainly because of our fast-growing urban development. I believe that the development in the next 5 years will greatly impact the quality of life in the city for the next 50 years and beyond. I'm also a father of two kids, ages 6 and 8. So I also wanted to help in whatever small way I can to pass on to them a place where they can be proud to call their home, and will also enable them to grow to their fullest potential. So together with my co-founders, Nana Cabales, Jan Kingo, Neil Bersabe, and my lovely wife, Nancy, we envisioned a sustainable Davao City where Davao designers can practice excellent design. And we hope to do this by being a platform for multi-sectoral dialogue, advocating the work of Davao designers, practicing research-based initiatives, educating about design and Davao culture, and documenting all these learnings to be shared with the public. And the talk tonight, which you are part of, is actually a big part of this mission. So we have 36 participants here from different parts of the world. So can I just, to recognize you, can you please type in which city you're from and which country? Maybe there's some people here from a city that we're not so familiar about. So if you may, please, can you just type in the chat box where the city you're from and which country you're from, so we can recognize. So thank you, Sir Francisco from Cebu. Maayong gabi, sir. Wendley from Davao City. Francis from Cebu City. Francis C. Elizar Padao from Davao City. Okay. So great. Stephanie Cabinge from Cebu and Danielle Llamazares from Olongapo City, Zambales. Welcome, ma'am. Okay, we have some friends also from Santo Tomas in Davao del Norte. So I always when we were waiting for the when we saw the registrations, we were surprised because we got a lot of people from outside Davao City, but we know that you're here for the speakers as well. So we welcome each one. Okay, great. So let's have our next slide so we can just have a some housekeeping rules. So please turn on your camera. We want to see your beautiful and handsome faces. And also we'd like to request you to mute your mic, unless of course you want to talk. And number 3, please post questions in the chat box. I'm sure you will have your questions as the talk goes along. So feel free to post them in the chat box so we can address them later. And additionally, we would like to request you to rename your Zoom to your full name and the company or organization that you are connected to, so we can also recognize you. And maybe some people here want to network with you. At least they know where to Google or how to reach you. Okay. So as you can see there on the right side of the screen, our program will be the introduction, then we'll go straight to the main lecture, to be followed by a short break and then reactions from our special reactors tonight, followed by a Q&A portion, which I hope that you will participate in. And finally, we'll just have a short evaluation on a Google form, so you can just do it online. Okay, we are expecting to finish roughly around 9 o'clock Philippine Standard Time. So I hope you can stay until the end. So are you ready to go? Type go in the chat box if you are ready, please. So if you're ready, please type go in the chat box so we'll know that you're all right. Thank you, Danielle. Thank you. Uh, our, our reactor, Choie, Jankin, thank you. Oh, hi, Mark Sheng. Thank you. Okay. So why collective housing, or why did we why are we tackling this topic tonight? So from my understanding, simple understanding, because I also am not so um, aware of this topic now, but I'm sure that the pandemic, the experience of this pandemic, has made most of us socially distant. I'm sure most of us experienced not meeting friends or family for months on end, right? And when I was reading the paper a few days ago, a columnist described the pandemic as endemic, meaning it will be with us for a long time. How then are we to move forward? And how will we learn to live together in this new normal? So our speaker tonight has an intriguing perspective, which he will share with us. He is the principal architect of Querk Design and Associates, and also the Dean of Southwestern University, FINMA School of Design, both based in Cebu City, Philippines. He recently finished his master's in architectural advanced studies in collective housing from the Polytechnic University of Madrid and ETH, Swiss Federal Institute of Technology, Zurich. So I'm not sure if he studied in Madrid or in Zurich, but we'll let him explain later, siguro. So without further ado, let's all give a virtual clap to our speaker, Myk Sanchez.
Hello, everyone. Good evening. Can you hear me clearly? All right. Sige. I'm looking at the weather here in my city. It's about to rain like in a few minutes, so I don't know if it will affect the internet. But yes, I finished my master's in UPM Madrid, and the program that the master's that I got in was collective housing. It was both collaboration between both schools, UPM, Politecnica Universidad de Madrid, and ETH. So I don't know how to say the right name of the school, but it's the Swiss Federal Institutions. And they both had a partnership because they saw really the need for collect housing. So these programs were made, and these programs were really popular in Europe. So good evening, everyone. I'm Myk. I'm yes. Thank you for the very kind introduction. And this evening, you have given me the task to really talk about collective housing. But let me share my slides. All right, share screen. Okay, here it is. Okay, sorry. Okay, collective housing. Um, Probably I'll just give a little bit of background of who I am and how I came about to collective housing. I finished my a few decades ago. I finished my architecture in San Carlos, and after that, I actually didn't. I was like really thinking of not pursuing or pursuing something else because I didn't know if I wanted to become an architect or be involved in the industry. So for 2 years, I was involved in I had a sabbatical leave, and in that sabbatical leave, I was doing a missionary work. So for 2 years, or almost 2 years, I was doing missionary work, particularly in Cebu and in Mindanao. So I worked for Philippine Foundation of Christ Youth in Action, and And my work was really to train youth leaders for that time, and to train them, for them, especially for their organizations, for their communities, and for their parishes. So this is me in our organization. And in this year, while I'm sharing you the slides, I'm going to share to you the reason why I got into collective housing and even housing, just to really start with. So in this time, like I was traveling in Mindanao for like a few months. And in the time, like as a missionary, I was assigned from house to house. So every week I was living from different household to another. So there were really like lavish houses I lived in one week. The next, it would be really humble houses. I really remember this time like I would be pumping water just to wash my clothes and wash my dishes. So I was really living the life. And at one point I was assigned in this university called Muswan State University. I don't know if it's still called the same university. And in this time, I met this very bright young kid that who was assigned to me, like training him. His name was Leo. His name is Leo. And then he was telling me like, Kuya, Ahya, Kaka, he was telling me like, Kuya, I'll be stopping a year of school because I'll be working with my dad. And my dad is like a construction worker. So I'll be working with him, and hopefully like I'll be saving up money for our thesis next year. And when I had a conversation with him, like I sort of found myself like, here I am. I really wanted to make a difference by being a missionary. But now that when we had a conversation, I realized that I could have more influence, especially in the field where I really grew up in. Like my father is a contractor. I grew up in the construction industry. And I saw myself like, if I get myself into this industry, more I'll have more I'll be making more difference. Like for every drawings that we do, especially for designers here, it really moves the economy. Like for every project that's approved, like there's a lot of people that really gets to work and have a life. So after that, after 2 weeks, I immediately worked for Sir Alex Medalla, Archinomics, they're known now. And this year, this was where I was really trained for, uh, where I was really trained for a few number of years. And this is where also um, I became classmates again with Bach. We've been classmates, so this is Bach. This is me. And we've been classmates since kinder all the way to college, and eventually nagka-classmate kami ulit sa work. And now we're classmates again in being officers in UAP in District C1. So we're classmates for life na talaga. And it was also this time, like I was building up my portfolio, hoping that I can work in Singapore, Hong Kong, or somewhere else. But this was also an opportunity before flying off. Like my dad eventually was developing all the properties he bought during the 80s when he was young. So he became a developer. And this was the time he asked help for me. So these are my bosses, my mom and my dad. And it was also a good thing. I was really also interested, and that's the reason why I stayed, because I knew that developers were given this task to at least provide 20% of social housing, 20% for every land that they're gonna sell for social housing or low cost housing. And this was also the time like when I took up my MBA, because I was really like, I really wanted to know the business, how this thing works, and how to really be effective in running a business, because we've been trained as architects for a long time. This business. So when I was there also working with my dad, this was also the time that I've had a conversation with my barber. This is my barber, Abel. Yes, I need a haircut, obviously, looking at me. So this is Abel, he's my barber. And then there was this one time while I was working with the drawings for our projects with my dad. He was looking at me and saying me, oh, you're drawing some floor plans, sir. And I told him, yes, I'm an architect. So, and then suddenly he asked me like, sir, can you design my house? And okay, tell me more about it. So he told me like, he has this 30 square meter lot, and he bought from his relative. So And then he asked me like, how much would it cost? So I gave him a price. After I gave him a price, like he was silent for quite a while. And after giving my fabulous haircut, after giving me my haircut, he suddenly then asked me like, sir, is it okay with you if I will give you 1 year's worth of haircut for you to design my house? I did. It was like an immediate yes for me because I need a haircut, obviously. So I got that project. Like it was something like, wow, someone's asking me, exchanging me. This is a really good deal for me. So when I was working on his project, this is his site. It was located around the riverbank, somewhere in Mandaue. It was um basically it was like a formal settlement, but they were given like lots that they were able to buy. I don't know how they did it, but eventually, it was also a good timing because I had projects during that time, and I was asking like clients like, "Can you help me out? I have this barber that we're building his house, and if your project have like mga ritason na mga tiles, or if we can recycle something, mga roof, can we use it?" So all my clients were immediately agreeing with me. So we were able to recycle all of those materials and bring it to Abel's house. And in my head, like I was gonna really design something nice, but eventually it still looked like any other house in the neighborhood. But that was me, like that was really my first time really involved in making someone for like Abel. And eventually, like I have my own construction company now. I've already started also helping out my workers in designing and building their homes. But if I look at Abel and my construction workers, a lot of us have the same plight. Like this is a powerful image that was shown during the Dust Bowl or the Great Depression in the United States. And this is an image that shows you what domesticity can look like. Domesticity is like when you look at this picture, they're already wearing everything about domesticity and they're carrying it with their hand. And they're even sitting on their entire household. Like everything in their life is in a luggage. And this is also something that my dad can relate. He's not from Cebu, he's from Leyte. He moved here to Cebu to get his education and look for a job. And this is also where he met my mom. So this is like a lot of light for a lot of people from the rural area moving to the urban places, such that they will look for a better life for themselves, because these are where all the facilities are. Education or good education's here, healthcare facilities are here, works here. And in 2020, as envisioned by or as predicted by UN, like 70%, almost 70% of the world population will be living in urban areas. So this is the reason why this program in collective housing if developed in Europe, because this was applied that that was already common to them even in the before the turn of the century. And so there's this, if you want me to have a quick idea on what collective housing is, it's really a reaction to density. And this is a reference from the book of Density by A plus T, who is the research arm for MDRDV. So it shows to us like we've been used to developing subdivisions or individual houses, but compared to a collective way of doing things or collective way of designing things, it has lesser carbon emission. And most of the time, a lot of the subdivisions are really located at the borders of the city, but we can have more control with carbon emission. And for individual houses, subdivisions, or suburbs, one thing also, uh, one thing also common to these types of development is that they have more infrastructure, like there are more roads needed, and more roads needed such that it will also, you'll need more lines for your sewage and for your electricity. But for collective housing and for more dense development, you can have lesser infrastructure, but they're more advanced such that it can cater to more, like bigger infrastructure, bigger sewage system, and even better mass transit system, like compared to individual housing. A lot of them will be relying on cars for them to move around the city, which is a model that has been championed by the United States. So a lot of their developments are really, are a lot of their developments in urban planning is like 30% at least of their development is for cars to move and cars to park. And lastly, like um, as a reaction to density, like when you have like this type or individual type of housing of development, at least we one thing that something that can be really created in collective housing and collective design is that it can create communities even better, wherein people can just walk to their work, can walk and can have easy access to the facilities, healthcare facilities, schools, etc. So just to summarize, at least why collective housing came about, because compact, we want a compact city instead of a dispersed city, collective housing instead of individual houses, and interaction of functions instead of segregation of users. And I think, if I'm not mistaken, for people in Manila, someone told me like there's already 1% of open area left in Manila proper. So I don't know, she's like an urban planner there, but I'm not sure if her facts were correct, but that's what at least I know, because we've been used to developing it like individually, individual developments and individual housing. So one thing that we do in collective housing is that we really test the ideas of domesticity. So I'll be showing you like 2 case studies that we did in UPM, and at the same time I'll be showing you 1 case study of what we're doing in Quirk Studio, and at the same time I'll be sharing to you a tool that what we use in our office. This is a tool that we're introducing this evening. It's something you don't have to agree, or it's like wearing a piece of shirt. If you don't like it, so you don't have to agree, but if you like it, you can wear it for yourself. So in UPM, or in the school that I did in Madrid, we did a lot of we did a lot of collective housing workshops and case studies. So I'll share you at least one to give you an idea what collective housing looks like. So this is one of our workshop. We titled the project Housebounds, and with Housebounds, what we did was that they gave us this brief wherein we have our mentors from MBDRDV, Jacob Van Ries, and together with Ignacio Barrego, who used to be his former staff. And what they did was that they downloaded this app called Share to Ride, wherein they wanted to visit their site from another city. So they downloaded this app and they were booking the ride in the app. And in the app, like they were booking it, and then it gave them a GPS. Oh, this is where the nearest car is. You can go here and then go to the other city. So when they went to the next city to visit their site, they closed the app and then paid it like through card. So one of the things that they were telling us, like when we had this app, what if we will use this app for housing and collective housing? So what do in collective housing is really we challenge the norms of domesticity. So we test ideas like what could domesticity look like in this day and age, and we explore and create new typology. So these are my group mates, and then with my group mates, like we were having like arguments, we were like having negotiations. We were negotiating like what are the spaces that we really need, because if you really look at it, if you look at the place that you're living in now, we call it when you look at the real estate that you're living in, how much frequency or time do you spend in one area compared to the other? Like for example, how much time do you spend in the bedroom? How much time do you spend in the kitchen, dining, living? So when we were plotting that out, like we were looking, oh, we're spending more time in the bathroom and the bedroom. Probably this is the space that I would want to need for myself, and the rest can be something that I can negotiate with others. So what we did was that we created this collective housing where we can have our own personal space and pods, and eventually we had those activities and spaces that we usually call kitchen, living, dining, but basically those were activities that we were willing to share with other people. So what we created was that let's first create our pod. Let's make sure that when we book this app, we can have a basic pod. And if I have more affordability, what if I can expand it horizontally, vertically? And we also had this research wherein there's this new technology wherein the elevator can move not just vertically but also horizontally. So we wanted to use this technology right here in the center, like, oh, I'm gonna book an activity today. By 12 noon, I'm gonna eat. And by 3 p.m., I'm gonna work out. So you're gonna book some space, you're gonna book some activity, and once you get in the portal or elevator, and once it opens, you get to different environments. So, and these were the different environments that we were willing to share with the rest of the city, not with just the inhabitants, but with the rest of the city. And at the back portion of it are the pods. So this is housebound. So that's why we called our app housebounds. And so these are the activities we can do within the building, and with the use of the ramps and the stairs. These were our ways to connect with the rest of the city, wherein they can also download the app and also use the facilities that we were willing to share with the rest of the community. So collective housing is really, is, as I said, a reaction to the densification of our urban setting, the urban migration, the diaspora from the rural area. And we had like 15 case studies with this one. And these are my classmates, very beautiful and handsome classmates that we had. So we had 15 case studies, 7 workshops wherein everything we did was just 1 week, and the rest were like a month or 2 months long. And then if you really look at all of my classmates, and if you look at the image that we have in our Zoom right now, I think I would assume a lot of us are architects or designers or interested in design or architecture. We always, I always assume and I know that we've always been practicing empathy. Empathy is something that we practice to a certain degree, wherein we get into the world of our clients, our users, and the people that we serve, such that we can create a built environment for them. Not just having just one point of view, but even getting different point of views to have a built environment that works. So we've been training for this ever since we were in college or we're in uni. And this is also the way how Merriam-Webster would define empathy, like an experience of another of either the past or present without having the feeling or thought. Feelings, thoughts, experience fully communicated in an objective, explicit manner. So even though this is how Merriam-Webster would Quirk Studio, one way that we wanted to practice empathy was like, we wanted empathy to be, especially in doing collective housing, we wanted empathy to be a tool for us to get the right information and to be in the right space to be in the right space for us to really make our right choices and decisions. So this is one of the tools that we use in the office. We call this tool wearing a rose-colored glass. So wearing rose-colored glasses, like for example, for the first time, if you wear a rose-colored glass, how do you think the world would appear? For the first time you would wear it, everything would appear pink, right? But if you lift it up, everything's back to normal. And then if you wear it for a long enough time because you like this rose-colored glasses, like let's just say you wore it for a day. If you wore this glass for an entire day, how would everything start to appear? Everything, because you've been wearing this glass for the entire day, at one point you will forget that you're even wearing glasses, to a point that everything that you're already looking at starts to look normal. Like for example, if I'm wearing this rose-colored glass and my friend would say, hey, can you get me that white bond paper? What white bond paper? It's pink bond paper. No, it's white. No, it's pink. No, it's white. So we were looking at how human beings were designed in such a way that they were viewing the world with filters. Like for example, like possibly one of the best example that I can share would be the anti-vaxxers versus the vaxxers. Like they will always insist that they're right, that, oh, this is pink. No, vaccination is wrong. No, this is white. Having vaccination is really correct. You're just not studying enough. No, you're not reading the right materials. So empathy for us when we're looking at it is we're looking at people are designed really with having filters or wearing rose-colored glasses. And because when we have these rose-colored glasses, it sort of blocks out the things that what they are really communicating at the very core. One of the things that happened, especially during pandemic, was that yes, I came to Spain with a lot of filters of what this course would be about. But it was this one. This is one of the most possibly life-changing moment for the entire world, or for me at least personally, it was because I was living in this 3 by 3 room, or even less, 3 by 3 room for many months, quarantined there for 2 months, and then I noticed myself like I was living in this room. I bought a lot of clothes, but I hardly even wear them. I bought these shoes and pair of spadrilles, but I haven't even worn these shoes. I've been just walking on my feet, and then I've been wearing the same clothes for almost a week now, doing my classes and having my classes there. And one thing that the pandemic really showed us was were the things that really mattered. And these were the times wherein I had more deeper conversations with the people across the world, looking forward to having conversations with my family in the Philippines and in the States, and having conversations with my classmates who were also experiencing the same things, and my friends who were trapped at home or in their rooms. And one of the things that happened was that when there was a natural way when these filters really disappeared for us, and when then we were really suddenly we were even more close to the things that mattered to us. And when I mean that mattered to us, like if you get rid of everything else, these are the things and the people who really matter to us. And like I would remember having this time like every 7 p.m. where we open our windows, wherein everyone would be clapping their hands and banging or clanging their kettles to cheer on for the healthcare workers, and they're clapping for each other and cheering on that we can do this, we can survive this. And I also saw there that people were really cheering on for each other because we've been missing out on life. And it was also during this time that we were introduced to this case study, and we titled this case study Reversible Urbanism. We were given this brief. We were given this brief to develop this place called Campamento. Campamento used to be like an army training ground, and eventually, this army training ground, they were developing it, turning it to a neighborhood and to a city. And in Campamento, what they were asking from us is to develop 60% housing, 20% 20% commercial space, 20% facilities for the community to use. So these are my group mates. This is Miguel from Spain, Audrey from Kenya. This is Simona from Dominican Republic, and representing the Philippines, Moa. And we had this conversation because we were going through the same things. We were angry. We were sad. We had the same experiences wherein we were trying to connect. And then they were giving us 2 months to finish this project. And in this 2 months, instead of creating an urban plan for whatever they were asking us for Campamento, well, instead what we've been doing for half of the time of the project was arguing. Like, how do we design a city? Our city has been always moved by capitalism. Our city has been moved by people who are really powerful. And when we had this conversation, we wanted to change a city that's not driven just by a few people. we've been used to living in a city that's been very centralized. Everything is functioned, and only a few people can really have a say. And when the pandemic happened, all the systems suddenly failed. Like when we were looking at the central business district, it was like one of the ghost towns in the area because no one was really there was no one really there. People would only go to these real estates only to work. And then the only things that were surviving are the ones who were doing their own self business, like family cafes. So we were trying to challenge this idea. What if we create a city that instead of being centralized, let's try to create a city that could be decentralized. By the way, this is the map of Madrid. So we were trying to create this idea of a decentralized city where power was distributed to people, not necessarily equally, but with equity. And we were, instead of doing a master plan, what we did instead, we were playing board games. So, okay, what's the best game that will demonstrate capitalism? So we played Monopoly, wherein the four of us were playing a game and we were trying to get rid of each other so that we will own the entire city. And then when we were looking at this board game, we were also looking at this board game called Catan, wherein you get to collect resources, depends on the type of landscape you live in. And with the resources that you have, you get to exchange it for you to build your kingdom and eventually try to get rid of the other kingdoms. When we were looking at these games, like what if we create something similar to Monopoly and Catan, but instead of me being on top and being on power, what if we were the ones creating the entire board and the entire city? So for the 2 months of this particular project that we did, instead of making a lot of plans, zoning, looking at it from top to bottom, designing a city like a god, like this is where people will live, this is where people will work. We will zone it this way, here. This is the best place to use it. So instead, what we did was that as a group, we became really rooted to the things that mattered to us, and what we made instead was a manifesto as a group. We wanted to create a city that was resilient, wherein buildings can adjust to the different needs of time, wherein we can have a city that's decentralized, where not everything should be only controlled by one certain power, but can be shared to different powers according to their different expertise and specialties. We wanted to have a city that was open sourced, where we can share your information, where it was revealing, such that people will know with every action that they did, they were contributing to carbon emission, to water, to electricity. So it will, every time you will have this information, probably if they do, it may give them conscious decision how they will live their life to lessen their carbon emission or whatever. We wanted to have a city where people were really in action, that everyone can be called to become leaders. And we wanted to have a process, particularly a kind of process like an organism. We also wanted to create this city that we're giving us to really go local, wherein we can produce our own materials to such to a good standard or high standard that we can even share it with our neighboring cities. And lastly, we created this manifesto that reversible ideas are reversible. That when you can build something, if you don't need it anymore, you can take it back and restore it to what it was before. So this, I know this is really full of idealism, but this is where we created this urbanism, which we called reversible urbanism. So we made an instruction manual, we made a board. This is the actual site that we had. So we made block systems. We modeled the block systems from Barcelona, wherein you combine 3 blocks and create a super block. And each super block, there was really good diversity. And in this part, there's like a timeline that we have to finish this game in 1 century, or at least in 10 to 15 turns before the game ends. And so what we did, like Catan, was that we had to create resources for ourselves as a city. We have to learn how to create our food, our mobility, the way we move around the city. How can we make a more biodiverse city? How can we construct everything? Where do we get our water? Like, how do we recycle water? We collect it from the rain, or do we recycle it wherever? How do we produce our own energy? And how we lessen our waste, and how do we manage our waste? So these were the resources that we had. And our goal was really to create 60% housing, 20% commercial space, and then 20% infrastructures that the community will need. So these are the probable combinations that we could have with the different types of blocks that we were going to make. So probably in a super block, it can look like this. It doesn't have to look necessarily like this, but the idea is there that in a super block, all of the things that they were requiring from us from this brief would be, we can check it. The goal of the game was really to create these different labs. Labs wherein cities can produce their own water, food, energy, recycling, mobility, biodiversity, and construction. So the goal is the city would be really successful when you can produce all of these facilities. And at the same time, we have like whammy cards, wherein when you pull these cards, sometimes you get resources, but sometimes you get this red card, which is bad news or good news. Bad news, there's a pandemic. You should pay this much resources. And if your resources run out, we will take away 1 block from you and probably 1 laboratory. And if we have good news, you can multiply the resources or get a laboratory or something like that. Obviously, we just had 2 months. So we played this game. And then when we played this game, like theoretically, we were doing it. Eventually, we were building our own city with the rules that we were creating. And the idea really was that we gave back the power to the people who will be living in their cities. That the city has been really created in a way that it's been controlled from top to bottom. And obviously there are good reasons why, but at the same time, it has an advantage and disadvantages. But this time, because of the pandemic, at least one thing we saw, what if we give it back to the people? So we played the game. These are the boards that we did, and these are the blocks that we created. And eventually, after playing a game, okay, this could be a possible master plan. So we didn't give our professors or workshop leaders an exact plan, but we gave them a possible master plan in doing it. The only thing that we planned out were the streets and the way that probably they can divide the blocks. And so it looks like this. And when me and my friend were looking when looking at this perspective, we were thinking, doesn't it look like a favela or something like that? But anyways, we were just really testing out ideas. We really did good. We were like #1 for this particular exercise. And now when I came back to Cebu, having these types of workshop, I was really questioning myself, like, how do you think I can practice collective housing here in the Philippines? Like, I don't really know. The idea of collective housing for a lot of the people here would be like condominium units, or probably the closest to collective housing that they can also get would be the more affordable ones would be the hostels. And yes, usually those are the ideas that they have about collective housing. So there was this one day wherein I was giving a talk to our organization, UAP, United Architects of the Philippines, yung Kilat chapter. They were telling me, Mike, you're fresh from Spain. Can you give us a talk about collective housing? So when I was giving a talk, similar to this one, but this one's more catered to empathy. When I was giving this talk, there was someone listening there in one of our Zoom general membership meeting. And in that meeting, he called me the next day and asked me, like, Mike, do you want to help me out? I work in the zoning for Mandaue City, and then we already presented something. Our engineering department for Mandaue already presented something to the mayor. But then when I saw your talk about collective housing, we want to have that. I'm really scared about this particular project because it's scary because I don't know what's going to happen to this project, possibly because it's yeah, because he was just scared. He doesn't want the project to. They were just like doing something modular, and then eventually built something for. So what happened in the reason why this project came about, because in Mandaue 2019 there was this neighborhood called the Maharlika. These were people or settlers who used to live in the coastal area of Mandaue, and eventually they were being promised by the city. They were promised by the city that, oh, we're gonna do a reclaimed area in front of you, and we're gonna promise you like really livelihood once these reclamation areas are going to be built. So in this area, this used to be a coastal area, and what happened was that um, they became like people who live by the rivers already, because there's a distance between the reclaimed area and the old city. And in 2019, Tipolo burned down, a portion of the neighborhood burned down, and this displaced about 530 households. And so these are a picture. Tipolo fire was on June 27, 2019. And when Marlo, architect Marlo from zoning of Mandaue presented to me this project, when he gave me this project, he told me like, can you do something about this? I'm really scared. I'm scared that probably when you're gonna create this place, probably it's gonna be a ghettofied place, or probably it's gonna replicate what happened in New York, or some projects here in Asia, or some favelas that were being built. And then he was scared, so he told me like, can you do something about, can you do and can you help us with this project? So with partnership between PIA, or Philippine Institute of Architects, and United Architects of the Philippines Leon Kila chapter, we had a memorandum of understanding. So we were able to work with each other in partnership with Southwestern University, which is where I'm working. We were able to pool of people, from students to architects, to work on this particular project. So this is a very long discussion, but I'll just cut this short for our discussion sake today. So we studied Mandaue. It's good that they were the median age of their population were like 24 years old. It's still a young city. There's still more ambition, more drive, more entrepreneurial spirit, more willingness to risk. And then these are also the actual land use map. If you look at it here, I'll show it in the next map. This is the area of the people who were displaced, or these are the people who used to live in the coastlines, but now they are now the informal settlers in this area, in this community. So in the center here, this is phase 3, where Maharlika, where this project is being proposed. So these are the different communities. We have phase 1, phase 2 here. Phase 3 belongs to Maharlika, and the rest are phase 4 and 5. So before we even started designing it, like studying the mapping, we were studying the mapping, the demographics of the city, everything. So eventually we came to a point like, oh, we have to go to the site, we have to visit the site, and we have to talk to the people and the leaders of this community. So we were able to meet with the body of the city, which was called Housing and Urbanization Development Office, which was headed by the late Tony Pet. And here he introduced us to the leaders, and they were the ones touring us around the site. So this is phase 5 of the projects, or this is the phase 5 of the strip of the communities that were living there. So we were looking at it. The first thing we saw were, oh, these are like really shanty houses. A lot of the houses that were built were using recycled materials. A lot of it, like from the wood that they were using, and there were times that you could see that they were using recycled GI sheets. And one thing we noticed also, that a lot of them were extending their lives to the street, wherein they would just open a window and it becomes a sari-sari store. Open a ref nearby the street, it becomes a carinderia. And then open a door, it becomes like a karaoke TV bar. And then there were also people, because this was not developed like really properly. So I'll show you another phase that they did, which is phase 2, the LT High project. So Here, they were also like washing their dishes. They would get their water from somewhere within the neighborhood, grab a pail or a bucket or a tamba, and then wash their dishes, clothes, and their clothes. So you can also see that they're hanging their clothes here. And they would use these materials here also. And so we went also to phase 4. We noticed the same thing. They were also there. They were also carrying their means of mobility there. They had, some of them had access to bicycles, to motorbikes. And then we also saw the kids really interacting with each other, because in between the spaces were really the streets and the alley. So all the life was really there. And then we went to this phase 1 and 2, which is LT High. This was a project done with University of San Carlos, headed by architect Danilo Ravina. And then they were using, it was good enough that they were able to really organize this particular community such that they were able to develop row housing developments here. And they were using these rammed earth methods, wherein they were using anapog mixed with a bit of concrete and some other mixes. So all the people who were living there were tasked to create their own rammed blocks and create these houses. And apparently these houses, I think they were given about less than 20 square meters. And it had a high ceiling such that it would allow them to even add a loft or a second floor for them once they're more capable economically. So this is what we noticed. And in the center of the street, it had more infrastructure such that the alleyways were also where the utilities were, their sewage system. And you can also notice they had pole lines wherein they had quicker access to electricity. So everyone had a more formal ownership of almost everything. And this is one thing that we've been always practicing with socialized housing, or at least giving housing to the people in urbanized area. What the government would usually do is give them a plot of land. This is yours. Usually they would give a household, no matter how big your household would be or how much you can afford, everyone was given, according to priority, at least about 10 to 15 square meters. I know there are some communities here in Cebu that they were giving 10. This particular one is more than 10. I think it's less than 20 square meters, this particular project. And then, but this time, at least this time, they had like a guidance of developing it by using the row house typology. So, and these were also the interiors of most of the houses. We would know that it was already permanent for them because they have a sense of permanence once they would start using concrete. Like, this is mine. I know that this is mine now. I'll make sure they're not gonna get this. I'm gonna build something concrete. So now that they're gonna build concrete, they know this is already theirs. It's like putting a stake that this is my lot, this is where I'm gonna live, and this is mine. And then the moment they would open the door, it's already the street. You could see your neighbor. You can even hear people singing right across or from somewhere in the neighborhood. And this is where, when we were looking at these photos, this is where we use this particular tool that we use in Quirk Studio. As I said, these are tools that we use. And just like these tools, it is also an invitation, probably if you want to use it or not. It's not necessarily a fact or true. It's really up to you. So we call this tool, it's really the tool, the similar tool of wearing rose-colored glasses. And what happens is that when you wear, something happens, and automatically as human beings, we attach it to a certain meaning. And then something happens again, and it sort of gives a validation to what you made it mean. And eventually, you no longer get to recognize what really happened and what we made it mean. So these are our perceptions, and these are the truths that we sort of concluded about things. Like for example, the examples I gave you, this is pink, this is white. I'm anti-vax, you're a vaxxer. So probably those are your perceptions. And one thing that we wanted to do with these different perceptions from our beneficiaries and the people, the stakeholders that we were having meeting with, is that we wanted them to really be really present with their perceptions. And then the moment that we made them present to perceptions, we started to sort of dismantle these perceptions and the truths that they were living in. We wanted to really segregate this idea. Something must have happened for you to make it mean this way. Something happened, you made it mean this way. And because you made it mean this way, you're looking for evidence that if something happens again, this will validate that yes, it really is true. What I made it mean is true. And every time we keep doing that, something also happens in our inner being. Like I'll give you a more detailed graphic wherein they were making a reclamation area. And all of a sudden, these people made it mean like, oh, we're gonna promise you work after we're doing this reclaimed area. But after when the reclaimed area was done, there was really no work left. So they were off to fend off their life. After this reclamation project, they suddenly made it mean like, particularly in the perspective of the beneficiaries, they would mean like they don't really care for us. They're just using us. And now that they had this in place, there was something else that happened that would validate these evidences, that would validate their conclusions, where an election happened. People were giving them 20 peso, 100 peso. Oh, they're just using us. Yes, it's really true. They're using us. They're using us. They don't really care. They just want my vote. And then a fire happened. When a fire happened, it sort of even validated even things mean more for them. Like I'm on my own. I am helpless. I am really nobody. Why would someone help me? I am nobody. I don't have a future. And now that we are proposing this Maharlika project, when we gave this to them, something happened to these particular beneficiaries wherein because of the things that happened to them and the meaning that they made it and the meaning that they've been attaching automatically attached to it, there was already mistrust and they were segregating themselves from the rest of the community. And what we did in Quirk Studio was that we wanted to plot this out in an architectural way. We wanted to plot out, well, let's study their built environment because their built environment is sort of really the reaction to what happened to them. So we were studying the self-built typologies that they did. As I said, they were given a piece of plot, and what they would immediately do is that they would build it with wood materials anywhere that you can give it and immediately put it there. Oh, this is mine. And now when they would have the means, they would even have a stake with, oh, I'm gonna make concrete on it and reuse the material, expand. So and for the rest of the years, when their economic status would improve, when they would have more money, better work, they would start to colonize the spaces around them. Let's start adding like a roof or a shield, and then let's extend it sideways. Oh, let's put tarpaulin. Let's add a karaoke bar. Or no, I don't want people to look at me. Probably I'll just put a fence around me. So these are the typologies really common to phase 4 and 5. And this is the typology that they were given in phase 1, phase 2, or called LT high. So they were just given a row house and everything. They were all this given standard houses for everyone, for the different households, and the beneficiaries for those phases. So before we wanted to really listen first with the beneficiaries from Maharlika housing. We were studying what Mandawi did already for the other similar communities who went through the same things. So, okay, an hour passed. I'm doing this in a hurry. So now we study this. This is a diagram that we did in particularly phase 4 and 5. So when we plotted it out, one thing that we really observed as we were walking along, talking to people in the different areas, we would always notice ourselves stopping. We were always noticing ourselves like we were going with this particular household owner. We're interviewing him, going to their places. And then we were noticing that, as you've noticed in the photos, they were extending their lives in the street. And then we were plotting out the journey map of at least a few people, and we've noticed that we keep stopping. We stopped to the people that were drinking in this corner, who were talking here, who were having the latest chismis news in the neighborhood, and the kids were playing. So we were just our journey from going from the start of at the edge of the community to the household that we wanted to, we kept stopping and started interviewing more people there. So if you notice here, especially for those who expanded with second floor. It was really quiet inside. And the moment they would go down floor, the activities would start to beat up. But the moment they would go out, like everything is already full of life. And everything they go, like go to work. And some of them won't go to work. They would take care. They would wash their dishes, clothes outside, or at least outside the perimeter of the houses that they were building. And then one thing that we did with this one is that we took away all the things that happened to them. And then suddenly we noticed something about these activities that we're doing. There were really lots of moments. It were like moments people were interacting with each other. And then we compared it to the phase one and phase two, and they were sort of giving us this very utilitarian units for every household. So they get these household, no matter what the size of your household would be, you would get the same thing. So when we observe this household, the thing is, because the arrows and the alleyways were about 2 to 3 meters, one thing we observed was that yes, there was still life, but all our movements were just really straightforward. We were just looking for where's your house. Everything really looked the same. So we were just looking, and then the way they would change it would be adding color to the door to or at least change the color of the material outside. And then one thing we noticed in these types of redevelopment was that there were really lesser moments going on. And one thing I've noticed also, the reason why I have this note here, it's because this was like a firewall between two of these, like the staccato of both row houses or a set of row houses. A lot of the kids were really playing here. Probably they were hiding from their parents or something. So similar thing, but lesser moments there. And so we also had stakeholders meeting with a lot of people. We had stakeholders with everyone. So yes, I won't really. One thing, it was really fun having the stakeholders meeting. To be honest, this project was introduced to us in May, and they were telling us we were supposed to present it October. And in true Philippine fashion, all of a sudden, the head of the SHUD or DHSUD said that they will visit us in July. So all of a sudden, the program that I plotted out from May to October was sort of compressed immediately just for 2 months. So we were like scrambling. I had work in the morning, and then we were working on this in the evening with the volunteers that we had in the different organizations who were committing. So every week we had like stakeholders meeting. And then we were really listening to these stakeholders meeting, and they were like really crying out the things that they were frustrated about. We were talking to the beneficiaries, the leaders of the community. We were talking to the mayor and the city admin, the housing, the housing regulatory board, architects and the contractor, even the private sector who are like the balanced housing contributor, the ones who provide 20% for every development that they do, and even the estate management or community association. And then they were like they were like complaining left and right, and me and my crew were like, sige, okay, write it down. So what na siya, write it down, put it there. Then every time they had like a complaint, a pain points that they had, we were listening to all of them, their doubts, their frustration, the things that made them angry about it. And then we started to ask him, now that we ask you what are the things that you're angry about, with those things that you're angry about, what really matters behind it? And then all of a sudden they started sharing like, I'm really scared. If they're gonna give us this proposal, which is 5 stories high, I don't know if I'm gonna have a sense of ownership to a plot. Because all my friends in phase one and phase 1 and 2 and phase 4 and 5, they have their individual lots. What if the government would take back this use of rock that they're gonna give us, this 5 story? So they were really scared. But at the same time, they were really also saw that when we asked them what mattered to them at the very core of it, what was really at stake for them, and then we saw that their lives were really at stake, their future was at stake, opportunities for work, their safety, their health. And then we were asking also the Mandawi city government. We got them to have this also same conversation. In some of our stakeholders meeting, there were like 3 or 4 stakeholders present, either physically, some stakeholders meeting we did in Zoom, and then some we did on site. And so just to summarize all of these stakeholders meeting, we plotted out that at the center of it were the people essential to this project. We saw that the people living or who will be benefiting this project, every time you'd really look at it, the relationship with everyone would be complain. I'll complain to this body, to the government, to the contractor, to the mayor, and what. But little that one thing we also noticed was this very nice relationship wherein the beneficiaries were also the one providing a lot of service for the city. I remember even when we presented these data that we had to the city administrator and to the mayor, suddenly they told us like, I didn't realize that this community had were very entrepreneurial. What we kept noticing about them was that they were just complaining. They were just complaining about this, about that. And when we present program to that, they would have walls already. They won't listen to us unless we give them rice or we give them money or we give them something. And then now when all of those were like, when they were presenting it to them in this manner, using our tool, they already notice like, oh, what if we provide something to even enhance their entrepreneurial spirit? And then the most beautiful thing about this was that everyone was able to be present of what happened to them and what made it mean to them. And every time we keep doing this, it was a vicious cycle for all of the stakeholders, especially the ones who were really at close for this project. So one thing happened when they started to acknowledge these things was that when these things started to become acknowledged and started to be, and even taken responsibility, like it was my responsibility that your experience about this particular project is this, when people started to take on responsibility, the rose-colored lens glass started to lift out from every stakeholders, and the things that showed up for us was what really mattered to all the stakeholders, what they were committed to. And one thing that we saw was they were really committed to life. Even though when they were having those complaints, if you really look at the core of it, and what you really look at, and when you start to listen to the gold mine, one thing we really notice at the very core of it is that the things that matter to them are almost equally the same with all the different stakeholders. So we summarized it when we present it. We summarized it that what really mattered to them was really a healthy city life. And then what mattered to them was sustainable legacy, such that the government is going to give this user frac in hoping that this would be sustainable enough wherein the people who will live here will live transiently, and that eventually this facility would no longer be needed by them, but be needed by others who will be probably migrating in the city. And then one thing we also noticed from their stakeholders meeting is that the community really wanted to involve themselves, and they only were waiting to be empowered. And coming from that space, we started to create our guidelines for Maharlika. So what they were giving us, the task, so I'm sharing this to you. This is still a guideline that we're still working on. We still have until October. So I'll share these guidelines very quickly because I passed my time. So the guidelines that we create, coming from that space that they have and from their commitment, we came from a place of designing these guidelines, remembering at least 3 of those main things that all of these stakeholders were committed to. So the guidelines that we were creating, by the way, these are diagrams, just to make sure these are not our proposal. So one thing we made sure that whoever is going to build this particular project will create first a legacy structure such that this shell system is well laid out, that it can be convertible to different building types and building uses. It should last for centuries and it can be highly adaptable. In this case, it should have the proper utilities to provide for housing. But if it no longer functions as such, in probably a century or more or so, we can convert these spaces as needed by the community. And one thing we noticed also, we have a list of demographics from the household. I'm not sharing it to you now because that analyzing that data is really quite complicated. So, but what we proposed to them based on our initial finding from those data was that we create modular partition, meaning this doesn't have to be permanent structure, such that these modular can be customizable interiors, highly adaptable, and they can even still continue their practice of self-build. Just the way that you're renting out a space that you get to renovate and do whatever space that's given to you. And for particularly for Mandawi housing, was that the sizes of the module will be determined according to your prioritization, whether you're an elderly or PWD, the size of your household, and the household income that you will have, or the current household income that you have, because eventually you'll still be paying a certain fee monthly for you to be able to use that space. And because of the different moments that we saw, we wanted to find or create opportunities where there was really placemaking where people can really get to interact. And in particularly activation programs of spaces that can create community, not just with the users, but with the rest or with the community in the city of Mandaue, such that it can give them an interaction of different social mix. In particularly for this particular, for Maharlika housing, to capture the cultural identity of these beneficiaries and providing livelihood training and educational facilities that they're already accustomed to and cater it specifically to their strengths. So basically in the ground floor, what we did was that probably, because this is not yet final proposal, these are just guidelines, have the spaces wherein when they go down, that's where they can have their trainings, probably where they can still do their karaoke, still have their sari store. I don't know yet, but we're still open. These are still highly conceptual. And then we also wanted to create guidelines about creating a facade that would reflect the budget, spirit of the user, community, the spirit of the city, an overall planning such that it will give them access to the current development of the city, that now there are more other means of mobility available now in the city. There's biking, there's scootering, and then they have more, the bus systems are starting to develop already within Mandaue. And of course, for the rest, like we wanted for them to really still comply with LEED certification. And lastly, when whoever is gonna design, build this one, is that they will have accredited architect, environmentalist, sociologist as needed by the project. So these are the 7, or at least 7 for now. We're still going to edit this further before our final presentation in October. I'm just sharing it to you, this one. And if you want to work with us, we're willing to share, or if you want us to share this for you and for your particular community, why not? I'm a very open source. I live in a very open source. My manifesto is really open source and very revealing. So now let's go back to empathy. Empathy, as I said, is like seeing a lot of things in filters. Like the beautiful thing about once we recognize that we see things in filters, and we don't even know that we know that we are wearing a filter in most cases, because it's very automatic. Like for example, this certain guy would say like, I'm a vaxxer, I'm anti-vaxxer. But the beautiful thing for empathy to happen is when we acknowledge that we have filters about each other, and we have filters about people who have filters. Once we sort of to acknowledge that, yes, probably I'm viewing this person with a filter. And then when I would start to acknowledge this person, like, yeah, probably you're right to not trust vaccine. Probably you're right not to trust, because I don't really know what you're going through. And I'm really sorry if this is the way I view you, because this is the way I view you, and I take responsibility for having this relationship. And most of the time, and especially in our stakeholders meeting, and most of the time when we have these tools in our design studio, I still never get bored on that day and the time wherein the other party would start to lift their rose-colored glass, and then when they would start to say, "Yes, you're right. That bond paper is white. Yes, you're right that for you to get vaccinated, the only reason why I'm doing this, it's because I'm really committed to my health, the health of the people that I love, and the health of the people of the community. And I don't know if I can trust these informations that you're giving me, but as far as I know, I have this stand because I'm committed to this." And then all of a sudden, when these conversations, you would realize that all of us, and most of us, are really committed to the same or similar things. So everything we're looking at are in filters or probably tinted, rose-colored glass. And if we use the tools of empathy, one thing that empathy allows for, that when we start to acknowledge and take responsibility for our views about each other and about our and even the views about ourselves, it reveals even more about who we are and how we view life through our own filters. Once we start to acknowledge it and we get to uncollapse it, one thing that's really left is a blank space, a blank white canvas or a clean slate. And the most beautiful thing about having a blank canvas is that you can already start to create something coming now already from the things that you're committed. Just like a blank canvas, you can already even base it already from what you learned, but at least now you can create newly and coming from the place of commitment and from the place of things that matters to you, wherein all of us has this room and space for us to be fully self-expressed. So I'm so sorry. I practiced this for, I got 45 minutes, but I think I exceeded an hour. Um, so,
All
by the
is
way,
forgiven, Myk.
I will now stop sharing. How do you stop share? Stop share. So
So
yes,
thank you, Mike. Can you can unmute and just express your thanks to Mike so that he can hear your voices? Maybe if you're
Thank you, Mike. It was amazing.
thank you. So yeah, we're running a bit late, but let's take a 1 minute break just to yeah, if you want to go quickly to the bathroom, and after that, we will turn you over to our moderator Nana for her reaction and the reactors discussion. So 1 minute, guys.
1 minute starts now. Meanwhile, to those of you here na magkakilala, use the 1 minute to, yeah, chat and say hi to everybody. Hi, Ma'am Carol in Samal. Hi, Sir Jim. I love the blazer. So sarang he, opa. Sige daw, let's check if you guys can like hear each other while Troy, is your audio okay? You're muted, Joy. Yes.
Yeah,
Sir Jim, I'm just checking in with the reactors. Jackie, audio okay?
I'm
Great.
okay. I'm okay.
30 seconds more. And to those who are gonna join us later for the Q&A, I really, really encourage you to turn on your videos and use our pretty virtual background. See, we're so colorful. See you in a bit.
Okay, everyone. Thank you for your patience. Now I'll turn you over to our Design Davao Society co-founder Nana Cabales for our Reactors segments. Take it
Hi,
away,
thank you,
Nana.
Mark. Thank you, Mark. Again, welcome everybody. May I ask our very lovely and awesome Zoom tech to please pin the reactors and there, ayan, we're pinned. And I think we're missing Jacky there and Mom Carol. Uh-huh. Yeah, I just wanted the reactors and the main speakers to be pinned on the screen. There. All right. Thank you, Achinansi. And once again, good evening, everyone, and good day to all our viewers from across the world. Before I turn over to the roundtable discussions with our reactors, I just want to say thank you, Mike, for that talk. I mean, I couldn't say it's good, very good. It's very deep and right. Do you agree? It's the topic is very deep, and I'm just I don't know if he saw if you've seen it already. I just messaged him and told him na, Gang, grabe ka deep sa topic. It's so deep. It's not for 30-45 minutes. It's a half day workshop. Right? And it's okay, Mike. It's okay. It's okay. That's what we're gonna do. We will go through it one by one later. Anyway, again, and another thing I'd like to commend with Mike's presentation, the visuals are so good, right? The diagrams and grabe ang galing. I mean, now everybody I think wants to study in Madrid too to learn those visual tricks or apply at Querkitect, right? Okay, sige. So just to guide you through our roundtable discussion, we have four reactors for tonight. One from Manila, one in Davao from Davao City, one currently in Samal Island, and one from Singapore. Okay, so we'll start with Choie Funk. Choie Funk is the principal of Atelier Funk Architecture, an educator by heart, and what else can I say about Choi? He is a super mom, and he's a super mom and a very empathetic designer who strongly believes that we should be all falling upwards. Choi, I have just one question for you. Along with your reaction with Mike's talk, I just want to ask in a perspective of an educator and someone living in the capital city in the metro and an architect who's working for the as you mentioned before with the 80% of the population who don't usually afford the elite professionals in our field, right? And my question there is in the context of collective housing and the Filipino culture, how do we bridge this gap and how can we make sense of it? Why must Filipinos consider this type of approach in housing and socialized housing more especially like collective housing, and what is really the importance of empathetic design because you are practicing it also. Can you enlighten us more? Thank you, Choi.
Thank you, Nana. Of course, thank you for this opportunity also to be here. Wow. Your question is exactly my question, listening to Mike as well, no? Kasi ano mo, I also had the opportunity to study outside of the Philippines, and one of the challenges, no, Mike, like when you are there, you have two brains, I mean two sides of your brain, whereby one is you're a student and you absorb everything, but the other one is like, how do I teach this? Oh, how do I even make use of this when I get back home? In fact, after my studies also, so he mentioned, I am studied in Barcelona. Barcelona was, when I was there, I realized that it's one-fifth of Madrid, which is the capital of Spain. And while he was talking about his experience, I was also going back to my own, and I realized that what what I did after my own studies was that I cut my head off and went back to the Philippines, and
Talagang napalingon kami dun, Choie, ah. Cut your head off.
You know why? Because a lot of the things that were talked about there in our studies is
In our
non-existent.
context.
I loved that he showed us what he did there, and then how he was given a chance to look at his, instead of the rose-colored lenses, but these lenses that would show you the context of the Philippines. Because a lot of, like, when you ask how could this be possible, I think the beauty of Mike's talk was that he was able to absorb the process rather than the actual typology. At this point, I think we have to, when we learn from our neighbors in Asia and later on, they have a way of doing things, and then we have that we'd like to kind of impose. The tendency of architect designers like this is that you impose, but the idea is like to understand the stakeholders, to understand the culture, the context, and then allow the people to participate in the design by telling us, like, when they understood that they have the entrepreneurial spirit. So part of the design has to be understanding where the people are coming from, so that we will not nanny them. We're like not nannying them, whereby you design for them, and then when you leave, they don't know how to make use of the space that we prepared for them. So the idea is really to, and so I was very much reminded by Aravena's social housing concept, whereby he left it parang half finished. The form is there, and then he let the people who will live there express themselves. I think his idea was not, when we create housing for the people, it's not professional charity but professional quality. So as designers, it's our job, and I think I'm very hopeful for this work that Mike is doing with the local the LGU, because we, or maybe anywhere, I mean not just in the Philippines, but as especially when we work with the people, we have to design with a heart. But now in the Philippines, it's out of a heartbreak a lot of times. So even for me, as you have mentioned, that I do a lot of empathetic design, because I in school I started with Benilde, where we wanted to be more inclusive. And the reason why we wanted to be innovative is in order to include more. And I think this is something that in the Philippines we need to do. And so, lastly, I maybe because I just have 5 minutes, no, but I love that Mike also started with that manifesto. I think what Mike studied is a lot about what he is as a person. He started with forgetting himself, and then offering himself to work for humanity, and then studying architecture. He has found his way, which is like yeah, to go into collective housing. The the um, um, the the principles of which are like, of course, born from the Europe, and a little bit difficult, because now when I think about hyperdensity in Manila, he's right. I mean, we made a computation. It's like 8 inches by 8 inches per person if you
Oh,
lay the skull on the ground. And yeah, the effect of this in most cities, that is, and the effect of this is environmental degradation. And then now with the pandemic, urban blight was like is our experience when the pandemic came. And so now with physical distancing, how do we do this? So I think the idea is like really to understand our relationship with the environment, and collective housing will eventually follow. But the idea is like, maybe, yeah, to understand our context, our culture of that place for placemaking, everything that I love the 7 points that Mike gave us also. And then understanding the stakeholders, and then eventually the history. I think these are 4 points also that I always go back to in order to enter into the heart of the people that I designed for. But I really am very thankful for this presentation of Myk, and that I look forward to working with you. I keep on saying that we have to talk, but there's never the time. But I'm sure the pandemic is opening up for us a lot of opportunities so that we can help in the co-creation of the post-pandemic world. I look forward to that, Myk. Thank
Thank
you. Thank you for this.
you, Choy. Yes, for reactors, we'll be giving 5 minutes for the first round, and then we will have a closing round later. Yeah, thank you for that, Choy. You really like reminded me how I felt the moment Myk started talking. Like for the first minute, I really like that he defined that, in essence, collective housing is a response to high density, and that we suffer so much high density and urban sprawl. I'm so sorry if, but I hate urban sprawl so much. Like, I mean, we can talk about that like for hours, but unfortunately we do not have that time. And Myk, also another thing that I really love about your presentation is that it was very personal. The topics were very hard to digest at once, especially for in a virtual conference like this. But yeah, I loved how you delivered it very personally. And yeah, you can really feel that he's really practicing it by heart, and that he's so damn serious about it. So let's move on to our second reactor, which reminds me about that point that how Myk defined collective housing as the response to urban density. To our second reactor, engineer and environmental planner, Carol Angel. She's currently in Samal Island, and for more than a decade, she was the regional manager of the National Housing Authority of the Philippines in Region 11. And yeah, among her many projects and many experiences and achievements working with the local and the national government, her most wonderful achievements thus far, and I think nothing can compete with that, is being a super grandma. So yeah, my question for you, Carol, is yeah, how can we bridge this gap now? Coming from a lens of a long time professional working with the local government and the national government in addressing this high density issue, because even our NHA, I mean, just to be frank and to be honest, our current responses are still on this uh, you know uh, mindset of building more, since we have more land, especially in the rural areas or in the outskirts of the city. Like, how can we build this gap of thinking? Because a lot of Filipinos still want to own their lots, right? It's a very Filipino thing that they want to have their own yard, and to raise their manok, and that Filipino culture. And right, Mike is laughing. So we have that. It's so hard for Filipinos to really like yeah, to put them like collectively as what this whole talk is all about. Even like 10 because people, subconsciously Filipinos have this strong desire of owning their own lot. That is why a lot of socialized housing that is done by private developers thrive so much, even if the settings are so far off the city, or so, because of that idea of having their own lot. How can we build this gap, Ma'am Carol, from a perspective of someone, and from the government, who work from the government?
Yes. Oh, am I?
Yes, we can hear
Am
you.
I okay?
Yes, yes. Oh, you're muted again. Oh, there.
Yes. So okay. What really struck me the most of architect Mike's presentation was really on the concept of house bounds, and then I'd like to tie it up with the 20% balanced housing development, because in the house bounds you were able to separate the the personal space, the space less often used, and classified it as personal space, and the other one, the the collective space, the space that can be shared. So the government can actually undertake the construction of these smaller spaces, the pods, and then the private developers can come in and develop that portion of the collective space as their balanced housing development compliance. So it will be more uh, a better partnership for the government, especially in responding to the need for, you know, coming up with socialized housing projects that does not have to be on individual plots. Although my my in my personal experience, especially here in Davao, socialized housing by way of condominium or tenement structures are still something that has to be accepted as a culture, no? Yung culturally that will be accepted by people, because I remember when NHA came up with socialized housing projects here in Davao, introducing the duplex, there were a lot of complaints. Duplex pa nga lang yun, ha? That they were sharing a wall
Party wall.
only. Yeah, on the wall, and then they still have individual lots. That's why during the early parts of this type of houses, it was forced, but then because of the reaction, we did not come up now with the duplex types. We went ahead with the individual structures. Now, lately, NHA is coming up with um, tenement housing na dito here in Davao. It will be introduced soon, and we still have to wait and see for the reaction, no? Kung gaano siya maging acceptable sa mga earlier sa mga beneficiaries natin. And earlier, it was discussed na ano ba yun? Teka, my own experience on collective housing is only insofar as sharing of common spaces like parks, playgrounds, open space, community facilities, parking slots. And then my second is that of the community mortgage program of the government by the National Home Mortgage and Finance Corporation, which comes close to collective housing, but only insofar as shared and collective efforts of the people needing housing in one, they agree that they need a house and lot that will give them security of tenure. Two, to form themselves into an association. Three, together scout for a piece of land acceptable to them. Still, it's a piece of land. And then four, they seek government assistance to purchase the property through a loan. And the fifth is to undertake collection and help each other out to ensure that their loans are paid. So parang ito lang ang experience ko sa collective housing. So if this housebounds should be picked up by the government to be adapted in this type of housing, smaller individual spaces and then bigger spaces for where people can gather together, like what you presented, that the individual rooms have people have lesser time of occupancy, no? But in the streets, in the open spaces, this is where people gather. So why not make the individual spaces smaller, and this
Upgrade the shared
common
spaces.
spaces, the shared spaces bigger. So yun nga, as I mentioned earlier, this can be a venue where partnership of the government and the developers in terms of compliance of the balanced housing provision can be realized, no, na the government sector will, the government can provide the housing, and then the private sector can comply with the balanced housing development by undertaking the development of these shared spaces.
Thank you, Montero. Thank you for that. I mean, at least we got to hear what the government is like doing. Because let's be honest, like housing crisis in the Philippines is like one of the most talagang problem natin ngayon. Not just in Davao City or in Manila, but the entire country is really suffering from the lack or the shortage of housing. And not just any housing, but a dignified homes, or like what a human being deserves. So to move on to our next reactor, we have architect and urban designer, an educator also, my former thesis moderator, and currently the city mayor's technical advisor of Davao City, architect Jim. And I really like that Neil posted just a moment posted the question about is it a typological issue or something else in terms of typological acceptance in our culture regarding the Filipino culture. I wanted to ask this directly to Sir Jim because back in college, during our thesis, one of the theme that we handled in Ateneo was introducing new typologies, especially in housing or in urban. Hello. Kindly mute, please, whoever that was. Anyway, Sir Jim, yeah, the question is like, yeah, I wanted to hit both my question for you and the question from Neil. Again, I just wanted to echo what my question was a while ago from Ma'am Carol, because you're also working with the government closely, especially in the city of Davao. And I think it's not your lenses or your perspective isn't only exclusive for Davao City, but also to our other cities, neighboring cities in Mindanao, and even in Luzon and Visayas that we can learn from. Yun pa rin, the question is the same. How can we build this gap between this, introduction of collective housing, Filipino culture, and our context? Wag na muna natin siguro isali ang pandemic. And yeah, and to answer Neil's question, is it typological issue or is it something else? Why is like tenement housing failing? Why is our housing design, sorry, but not really great at the moment? Sir?
Can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Fantastic. Okay, so I guess it stems from culture and history again. If you can remember the previous talk that we have last
With
month,
Paulo
wherein we had
Alcazaran, yes.
yeah, there was he gave us a very good background of this
Historical, yeah.
problem. Yeah, it's inculcated already in the bloods and bones of the Filipinos that you will always have to own a lot, a house and a lot. And it is further being uh, driven into us by all of these advertisements, the land developers and such that. But if you look at other countries which have similar densities to us, they're actually moving away from this, right? Moving away from the sprawl. So I love the talk that Myk has given. Again, I believe it has a lot of potential to really affect and influence the designers and even policymakers here in the country and of course in our city. Now, I think the very best way to counter that mentality, yeah, is the self-build typology. Allow these families and these owners to have a certain degree of freedom
to design.
To design and build according to their experiences, according to their perceptions and principles. Because then slowly, I think that will, the mentality of having to own a lot will be slowly lost.
Parang replace it with sense of ownership.
Yes, and if we see that, I think Ma'am Choi has, I think, is that in Colombia?
Aravena, yes,
Yeah,
that's what Aravena made.
yes,
Yeah.
yeah. So that was very successful. But
Chile.
in Chile, yeah. So now, where do, if you look at collective housing, it's actually collectively organizing the experiences, principles, and truths of these individuals. But that is where emphatic architecture can come in. Because in emphatic architecture, you get to explore these people's realities and you get to partner with these people. And because we want to learn from them, we want to learn from their experiences. And this is what makes it collectively organized. And by collectively organizing it, and us, for us designers and planners or policymakers in that sense, would then turn that and help support the community. So that's how I look at collective housing and emphatic architecture in this sense. Now, also, I know someone is here. Shout out to my former classmate in Masters, Sherwin Ramosa. He's here. I know if you look also in terms of collective housing and these collective spaces, as Ma'am Carol has mentioned, I frequently go to informal settlements, and I really just want to study how they create their gardens. It's really nice to see how they create their gardens. And if you look at typologies that wherein it's a very small informal settlement community, they are sharing these gardens and turning that into a multi-purpose space. Sometimes they do gambling activities. At the hottest parts of the day, it's going to be a laundry hanging area. So in that sense, the Filipinos have already been practicing collective housing or collective planning. It's just that as architects and designers, we have the ability to interpret and help guide this.
Introduce the science
yes,
of
the
it.
planning principles, of course. But the danger for emphatic architecture, kasi, is you fall into this trap wherein you just focus on the people and you lose yourself as a designer.
Yeah.
if you get it. Yeah. So I love also how it's what Mike presented was a perfect balance. They did not lose themselves, their sense of designer. And one thing that I really commend is the card game, the sustainability card game. I love it. For students who are here, but also for architects and planners, that is a great way to shake up your planning process. Yeah, and you can learn a lot from that. Now, connecting it to the point of Ma'am Choi, collective housing is actually one of the perfect ways for us to combat this sprawl. Collective housing actually helps us build high density but maintain a high amenity level, either by collectively sharing spaces. In some countries in collective housing, they do share dining, living, kitchen spaces. But in the Philippines, in the Filipino setting, like Ma'am Carol has mentioned, it could be those green spaces, those social spaces, and all of those things. So, yeah, just to end my reaction, I mentioned that in emphatic architecture, we explore the realities that we have now and turn them into design-related decisions. However, I pose these two questions. What about digital realities or digital experiences? How do we put in empathy in those senses? But also, what about now? These pandemic experiences. Where does empathic architecture come in? And even collective housing. In my mind, there are a lot of potentials again, but it would take too long for that talk. So I guess that ends my reaction. Thank you very
Thank
much,
you, Sir
Nana.
Jim. We'll have another quick round later, probably. Depends on our audience. So yeah, thank you for that, Sir Jim. I really love how you like parang na tapestry talaga siya. I love it. And I just wanted to highlight as well that what I learned from this topic and from the talk and from what so far the three reactors have shared is that really, like, the essence of empathic design doesn't only come from the designer or the one doing the policies, or the one who are designing, the architects, the planners. No, it's really a collective thing also that come from everyone for it to work. Kasi if you are so empathic as a designer, and considering everybody's need, and like, absorbing all their yeah, their issues and whatnot, but the person, or the users you're addressing to, are not naman open about it, and really not empathic, or again, haven't really made a breakthrough from that very thick and sticky ingrained mentality of the Filipinos, as what Sir Jim reminded us of. And like what Choi said, this whole collective housing typology to reach the Philippines in like fully will take a long journey and a long process. And that's really why, that is the point that I really pushed for this talk to happen. Because these are, I'm not saying that this will ultimately solve the housing problem of the Philippines, or in any context. It's just that if we have this option, it would be great, because a lot of people will resonate with it, right? Because I also wanna echo with what Sir Jim said. The Filipino culture has already parang what you call this, subconsciously started collective housing in a degree. Kasi when you, during my master's class in UST here in Davao City, done in Davao City, we went to visit. I forgot what it stands for, Sir Jim. Help me out, or Mom Carol. SIR. What does it stand for again? I forgot. Anyway, it's mostly
Slum
a dense place.
improvement and resettlement. Slum
There.
improvement and
Yes,
resettlement.
there. So we have this very it's very known place here in Davao City, and even though the word slum is linked to that place, you won't feel that way really once you get into the heart of it. Because a lot of people there are also college students. A lot of people there are in the working class, and I once walked through the entire village, and I was amazed with what I saw. The streets were activated as shared common spaces. And tama yung sabi ni Sir Jim, he was correct. It's very evident in the Filipino culture na during the hottest time of the day, when the when the afternoon sun comes in, like, they activate the cantos, right? Filipinos canto, or the corners, the shared corners, and we talk there, we drink there, we play cards there, and the kids play there. So in a sense, in a degree, Filipinos are already here in this collective housing paradigm or typology. Maybe our job as designers and policymakers is to really make the science and the art of it more understandable and relatable, and organize it. That's basically our job, and definitely not losing ourselves. Thank you for pointing out that one, Sir Jim. And this is like the best way to open up for our special reactor from Jerde. Jacky Cheng, for our audience, is currently the vice president of Jerde Partnership, or Jerde Places, as they're known in social media. Their works are not only architectural buildings, but mostly placemaking, developments, mall, and other places that have really high retail value and public sharing spaces. And they're an LA-based company and LA-based firm, but they also have a headquarter in Singapore, which Jackie is in right now, and they have projects in South Asia. I just recently reviewed one that they have in Indonesia, in Jakarta, the Breeze City. It was so good. I fell in love with that project. Anyway, so Jackie, thank you for being here and for gracing us your time. What I wanted to ask is, as Choie said a while ago when she started her reaction, studying in Barcelona, or being immersed to the foreign culture and the foreign way of thinking, and knowing that, oh my God, it's not present in my home country. We're way too, she has to cut her head off, but mommy bangs, let's just cut our bangs, not our head off. But I really totally get her point there, because whenever I visit Singapore, there's always a little bit of heartbreak, because Singapore is our neighbor, and how there's bitterness in that sense, visiting your country and other countries and learning. My question is, what do you think? Yeah, learning from what our speakers and reactors shared, having what is like in the Filipino culture. How do you think can we start up a really good and authentic way of addressing these issues, like the culture, the placemaking, the housing issues, just like how Journey is very empathetic in your designs and very user centered, and but at the same time never ever losing that aesthetic, that beauty. Oxygeno, by the way, you guys check it, it's amazing. It's in Brazil, correct?
No, Costa Rica.
Oh, Costa Rica. Yeah, it's in Costa Rica. It's amazing. So my point is, how do you guys do it? Can you share? How can we learn from it? Just with that touch of Filipino context, that developing countries, stubborn people. I'm sorry to say that, but that's the
Yeah.
truth.
Thank
Please,
you.
Jacky.
Yeah. Well, thank you for your introduction. Then, there's no magic to it though. We have been trying very hard in different cities, and we also have quite a bit of things going on in Manila and also Clark. To kind of answer your question, I will have to say that it's very related to your topic today. Instead of collective housing, probably in my mind, it's more about a collective experience. It's about how do we collectively create or curate certain things that are related to the DNA of each community, cities, or countries. And I think to your second part of your question, more developing countries, or like you brought up the example of Breeze City in Jakarta. We actually find that more opportunities can be done in a more developing city, just because you can find the more core fundamental of what people really need from there, compared with the more developed cities like Singapore or Hong Kong and all that. It's a lot of rules being set by developers that they may think that they are right, or because of the economy is driving certain factors that you can never change. So, kind of going back to your question of what is experience? Osigano that you brought up, Roppongi Hills, Namba Park, or some other projects that we have done. It's really about, and it doesn't matter whether that is residential, retail, entertainment, or whatever they are. And I think the key thing is, how do we create the communities? And from Mike's presentation, and I think that the key thing is why housing is so important. And it's not really about just the Filipinos culture or habit that you want to own a lot. And actually, almost majority of the Asian cities or countries, they have that habit. They want to own something, and whether that is big or small. But what is the idea of the sense of belonging? And it's not only to create a public space for retail, but it's also creating an experience why this is a place for me when I call it as a home. So it's how do you create a community? It's not just a box that you go in and out. You wake up in the morning, you sleep at night, and then you're out for work. But it's about why I want to live in there. Whether that is in a bungalow setting, whether that is in a high-rise setting, but that's kind of the communities that we want to create in there. then where we are right now, living in this world, is adding a more kind of a different complexity into it. Like a meeting like this, a seminar like this, 2 years ago, we don't need to do it in Zoom. We can actually do it in person. So now every one of us is in the room right now looking at walls, or maybe if you're lucky enough, you have a window, but this is not what people supposed to be. We can still chat, but like here, I cannot hear the audience. And seriously, I don't even know other than showing to me 43 people here. But it's not a setting that we are used to have. So, but what I'm trying to say in this pandemic world, with experience is kind of counter-reacting with what we try to do. We want to gather, we want people to utilize the space together. So we're talking about more denser proximity. But these days, social distancing, 1 meter apart, 2 meter apart, is no way that you can do it. But it's also bringing up a very interesting, as well as a challenging topic, maybe also for Myk to think about longer, is housing, residential. It's no longer just residential. Because look, we are working at home using Zoom. And most of this country, especially in Asia now, we are actually dining at home. So we are no longer just residential. We are F&B, housing, office, and sometimes because there's no more. Yes, and also actually for medical reasons, for some people who need to be quarantined, and school. So all different function within a flat or a lot. So what is that going to be? It's all different kind of experiences within the little space that we have. So I mean, it's no right or wrong answer yet, but at least it's something that we all have to adapt into, change ourselves, and we think about what a simple function used to be, but no longer that simple anymore. So a lot of our design, from the project that you saw, or you mentioned, actually, we are having a lot of ideas about blurring program. So because it's no longer just office, because no one goes to office. And that's why these days we have co-working, because you're kind of here, kind of there, right? No more just pure restaurant, because some people cannot go to restaurant. So how do we blur the lines and make the dynamic even much stronger and richer for what we as a human being to do? So I mean, that kind of a snapshot of what we do things and how we do things and how we see things. So if there is any other opportunity in the future, definitely we can share that, or to share that in person.
Thank you for that. I mean, yeah, I can see Jim, Myk, Choie, and Carol nodding the entire time, because yeah, that resonates with us. And thank you so much for letting us know that Jerde is very game for further education, because we need it, especially now that it's so hard for us to study abroad.
Yeah.
And yeah, I also to be honest, I am also an educator, so I really hate this entire virtual thing. It can never replicate the real meeting in person, the classroom experience. The right, the amount of effort that you have to exert just to digest what the other person on the screen is talking is double. And I really like that you sort of echoed what Sir Jim, what Architect Jim mentioned a while ago, about how about digital experience, right? Because when we design, I think now, I as Mark said in the introduction, the pandemic is now called endemic, meaning it's gonna last for longer period of time. So maybe we'll be stuck in our homes for a longer period of time. So I think we have to rethink also, what this whole thing is going to bring us. I'm just gonna check out our chat box if there are any questions listed. I don't see any yet. I think Neil's question has already been answered by Sir
Nana,
Jim.
we have
Is
a
that
couple
right?
of questions. Do you want me to read
There.
them out?
Oh, sure.
Yeah,
Please, please.
I was taking note of them. There were some questions earlier.
All
So the
right.
first
Cool.
question, let's see. All right. So the first question is from Sherwin Ramosa. And he observed that excellent case studies presented by Sir Myk. My question is, will collective housing be a solution to the housing problem plaguing Philippine cities today?
Oh, that's
Yeah.
right. All right. When I presented this case, it wasn't really about looking for solutions and collecting, yes, collective housing, but it was really as what Jacky was saying also, it was really looking for a place where really there's a sense of community because the communities are already there. What collective housing is to really capture that, introduce typologies that will capture that sense of communities. So um, it's also like um, adding in a way like it's already existing there. The relationships are there, but it's a matter of building that built environment also such that it can enhance even more the interaction of the communities. So collective housing, I would say, is not necessarily the solution. Um, it is just, yeah, not necessarily the solution. It can be one. There can be more options than that. But it's like introducing a new typology because we've been used to a certain way of building things. And adding a new typology is like adding a new species in the environment. Probably when we add that, can it disrupt the current way that this environment already is interacting with each other, or can it enhance the way that people are interacting? So yes, that's my answer for that question.
Yeah, I think Mike, that kind of echoed how Jackie opened it up. That's like there's no perfect solution, or like there's no perfect answer to problems like this in design most especially. So any other questions, or I am Mark?
Yeah, we have one from Mikey Ramos.
Yeah, I think he's
Um,
here. We can invite
yeah,
him to
would
talk.
you
Mikey.
want to ask
Mikey
directly?
is
Ask
a
Mark
good
directly.
friend and a planner by heart also. Urban designer, urban planner. Mikey,
Hi
we're
guys.
there. Hi. Hi, Mikey.
So I'll ask them very briefly lang. So Mike, well, it was an excellent presentation. Thanks for that. It was a refreshing presentation to hear. But you were mentioned kanina, sorry, using Tagalog. You mentioned earlier that you had so much stakeholder meetings. So I just wanted to ask, at the end of the numerous stakeholder meetings, how did you then weigh which things to listen to adopt and implement, coming from the perspective of a designer, looking at the different considerations coming from different stakeholders? How do you weigh it personally? And how do you confront the reality that you cannot resolve all of the considerations presented to you? So what is your lens on selecting which ones to listen to?
You
Yeah.
are asking for my filter and how to do
Mikey,
things.
is it okay to share where you at where you're connected? Sige na.
Sige, okay lang.
Yeah, Mikey is ikaw na nga magsabi.
So I'm a good friend of Nana, but I'm working for Palafox. So we've been seeking a lot of recommendations from all of these talks
Yes.
because we're directly engaged with some of the things that you our guys living in. So we're very much opening our ears and minds and listening to new ideas and solutions that
Yes.
we can
Yeah,
adopt.
I purposely wanted to have Mikey share that kasi may hugot si Mikey. And Mike, you can also share your hugot. I mean, we are all learning here, and I think that's what makes this more empathetic.
So, all right, I don't have hugot ha. Anyways, first, like what you shared, like the having the interaction with the stakeholder, what made us really present were all the things that happens and what they made it mean. So those were data for us. But as I said, at the very end of it, once those are all like collapsed or at least identified, if you really go at the core of it, at least when we start to design it, we started to design what was really the core of it. That's why I presented like a summary of the core, which was really a healthy city life. Uh, in most cases, since this is user frac also, we were also looking at the perspective of Mandaue City, because this is their structure that they're going to be borrowing for this community. So we were looking at that legacy structure. So they also want that legacy. And at the same time, like the people have already been clamoring to be involved in the community. So at least we know where we're coming from as a designer. And we can even still use the data that we gathered along the way. But having that in heart or having that in place, that this is what we're committed to, whatever the output will be, at least we know as a designer what our commitments are. And it can appear and it can show and it can be expressed in any ways, because we have different ways and different lenses as designers. But at least I know from the lens that I'm wearing, or at least the context that I'm coming from, is the commitment of me as a designer and the commitment that these stakeholders have as well.
Thank you for that wonderful answer. Thanks, Mike. Thanks, Mike. Mike, did that answer your question? Was that helpful?
Very interesting response. Yeah.
Yeah, I think that's something that I also wanted to ask Mike. Kasi 'di ba, if you venture into design thinking, into empathetic design, you will really have to listen to a lot of people. And yeah, it's really valid as a designer, as a planner, as a decision maker. Where do you draw the line? Where how do you filter? Right? So just a little bit, like, allow me to extend a bit to our audience. I hope you guys are okay. Jackie, can you share a bit of how like you handle it? I mean, as you've mentioned before, like the heart of Journey is really understanding people and finding that sense of community and belongingness for each culture or for each context that you design with. So I'm sure, I don't know, but I'm sure you talk to a lot of people as well, or do you? And how do you like filter that, as what Mikey Ramos just asked? Mike, can you share
Yeah,
a bit?
we do talk to a lot of people, and you know, so every time when we have a project in any city, we really do a deep research. And you know that we, you know, a project successful or not is really not just, it's not like an overseas architect or designer coming in, then they will get it. And also what we believe is never just a pure look of an architecture. Well, like a lot of people talk about iconic design is about how cool a building is, or the facade is. It's not that. It's really about the content. So we put a lot of our focus in understanding what the content is all about. Like, for example, we have projects in Clark, in Philippines, like, you know, of course, you know, there is a lot of golf course and casinos and all that, but you know, the kind of the easiest thing that you can try to put yourself in the context with, Clark is actually missing a lot of things. They have their own very unique type of entertainment, but it's not an entertainment that family will like. So you know, you can kind of think of a family-oriented thing, you know, venue that could actually make it happen. But then, as well as you know, if you try to put culture facilities or even dining or F&B and all that, then is what kind of F&B and what kind of experience that you want to create. So started off with the capture audience. So who are they? Why are they coming? How are they, you know, why are they coming here for? So we ask a lot of those questions with our clients, developers, as well as the local. So to really make ourselves embedded into the DNA, I repeat again, it's really the DNA of the people. So I mean, one quick example, you know, one of the projects that we have done in Hong Kong called Lanham Place, 15 levels of retail. So it's kind of the idea. I mean, you would never do retail more than 3 levels, but apparently that is a 15-level retail. So the idea is about creating a shopping street, kind of, getting the idea of the Hong Kong fabric of that Mong Kok area and put that into place. So, I mean, a lot of that we will do. We call it kind of the soft programming, and which is the most important thing of a success of a project.
Thank you. Wow, it's thank you for sharing that. It's vital, and I'm looking forward in behalf of the Design Davao Society and the whole Philippines. We're looking forward for more lectures from Jerde, right, Sir Jim? Sir Jim is smiling, as I told you when we were at our breakout room. Jim is such a huge fan of Jerde, being an urban designer himself. Okay, so it's almost 9:30, and as we promised our audience that we're gonna end at 9:30, and we learned from our last talk with Paolo Alcazaran, we lasted 4 hours. We all had Zoom fatigue. We're gonna tone this time. Okay, just a quick feedback from our audience. Are you guys still okay? Are you guys still following? Who is still here? Right? Please say yes if you're here, or unmute and just wave and say hi. Yes,
If
yes.
you guys want to continue,
Yes.
please type 1.
if you want to continue more onto parang concert, when you attend the concert and when the artist is like rendering their final song, everyone is more.
Yeah,
Yeah, I mean, yeah, again,
but
allow me
we
to.
appreciate everyone who's here. We understand
Yes.
if you need to leave, but we're gonna let this
Wait,
roll
not
until
yet.
it
Yeah, I
will
am Mark.
until
Wait, we still have a few more minutes, so
yeah.
I'm gonna ask everyone to please stay for our post talk evaluation, because it's very important for us to hear from you so that we may improve further. Okay, so for my closing, again, what I really learned from this talk is that, one, it's very good, especially in the Filipino context, and for countries who are also struggling in housing or in placemaking in our neighboring countries in Asia. It's very good to, open your minds and do more talks like this, and don't think and don't mind yet if it's really applicable right now in our context, or if it's really, does it have value? Is it relatable? I mean, let's try and explore more ways, more tools to, solve problems, and let's really strike a balance between the science, the art, and the heart of it, because this is what I learned also in my young journey as an architect, that, you know uh, architecture is art and the science at the same time, but sometimes we leave out the heart of it, and the heart of it is really designing for people. Right, at the end of the day, it's about making our living conditions better, and having a better experience as designers as well. So I hope, as we continue and seek for empathic design here in our country and outside, I really hope that we don't also lose ourselves in the process. And what I really learned from this talk, from all of you, empathic design is not a two-way street. It should never be linear. It should be holistic. And even though that I would close with what Paulo Alcazaran said last talk, when I asked him, is there hope for the Philippines? And he said with confidence, yeah, there is, because the Filipino spirit is more resilient and stronger than you can ever think of. And as Oscar Wilde said, some are sitting and looking, staring at the gutter, but some of us are actually looking at the stars. So yeah, thank you so much for allowing us and gracing us your time. Let's do a quick fast talk. 30 seconds for each reactor. Final thoughts, final words. Let's start with Mike, and then Choie, and then Carol, Ma'am Carol, and then Jim, and then lastly Jacky. Maybe 30 seconds. Final thoughts. Mike, go.
Final thoughts. Yes, I can sleep now. I prepared really thoroughly, so I'm sorry if I passed 30 seconds, but thank you so much for allowing me to
Yeah,
share.
thank you, Mike. Yeah.
To share.
My bad, because your talk is wasn't a talk, it's a workshop. Next time we will get you for a workshop. Choy, final thoughts.
Yes, of course, gratitude for this opportunity. I push for more of these things, like we have to raise the level of discourse to that level whereby we can really critically think as a people, because we're not used to that. And that we have to, I like that there's no one size fits all. I am more for the process. So let us find out answers that would be relationship based, it's relevant, and it's responsive. The pandemic opens up a way for us. I think that the obstacle is the way. So let us take advantage of this, and stay positive. And I just wanted to, yeah, because it's my first time to meet everyone. I appreciate Ma'am Carol, Jacky, Jim, and of course Mike, and of course Nana, and everyone here. Thank you from Manila.
Thank you, Choy. Obstacle is the way. I love that stoic mindset. Ma'am Carol, final thoughts. Please unmute. There. There. Not yet. Not yet. There.
Okay, so in conclusion, when we share something in common like life experiences, roles, personal identity, it is seeing aspects of ourselves as designer in the dweller. That is relatedness. Thus, the expression relate na relate. Empathy is understanding another person's experiences like sadness, joy, and then realizing that they are ours too. We relate by connection through human experience, and then we can truly empathize. When we do plan, best to get as much info like what Sir Mike did in the Maharlika project. So thank you so much for everyone.
Thank you so much, Ma'am Carol. Enjoy your summer stay. Sir Jim, final thoughts.
Yeah, it's always my practice in teaching and in my practice as an architect that architecture should not be selfish. And one way to do that is to really feel and understand the emotions and circumstances of all the users. Because by then we both empower the community and us as the designers. So I urge young designers here and also all the designers and planners here is to look at what people do, ask people to participate, and try things ourselves. In that way, we elevate our design process. And lastly, to close this is that what I would love to say is design in the position of caring.
Uh,
Yeah, that's it.
that's status worthy. Jacky.
Yeah, thank you. I'll keep it short. I will say that there are a lot of opportunities out there, especially in Philippines. Completely optimistic about it. And the key thing is sooner or later, finger crossed, we will see each other, and we can do this again in person. And I think that will bring us in the destination that we would like to be. Definitely.
Thank you so much. Again, Design Davao Society is about designing for life. So thank you everybody. Again, I'm just gonna ask for a bit more of your time for our post-talk evaluation to hear from you. The entire audience will stay with Mark in this big group, and then the reactors and speaker and the core group with me on the breakout room. We just have few questions, how to do this better next time. So